Hi, officer. Is there
She
a
doesn't
problem?
live here. I've never seen her before.
Ma'am, I need you to step away from the door.
This is my house. I live right
She
here.
was trespassing. She doesn't belong in this neighborhood.
I'm gonna need some identification right now.
Officer, I just got home from
She
the
was
grocery
lurking around
store.
earlier. I saw her.
Ma'am, at this time you are being detained.
Whoa.
She was carrying groceries. That's it. A brown paper bag full of vegetables, balanced against her hip, white sneakers on the pavement of her own driveway. And still, before she could even get to her front door, a police officer was telling her to put the bag down and keep her hands where he could see them. What started as a Tuesday afternoon errand run turned into something that no woman should ever have to survive in front of her own home. What happened to Kate Aaron on that quiet residential street was caught on surveillance footage. And what that footage revealed about her neighbor, Diane Whitaker, and about the systems that were supposed to protect Kate, is a story that goes far deeper than most people are willing to follow it. Because this story doesn't end with cheering. It ends with a woman sitting alone at her kitchen table, wondering if the neighborhood she bought a home in will ever feel safe again. Before we get into it, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that button right now, because stories like this one deserve to be seen, understood, and not forgotten. All right, let's get into it. Kate Aaron was 34 years old and had lived in her house for 2 years. 2 years of mortgage payments, 2 years of waving at neighbors from her driveway, 2 years of learning which garbage pickup day was hers and which coffee shop was closest, and which route home had the fewest lights. She worked in healthcare administration, not a flashy job, not a quiet one either, just necessary and steady, the kind of work that keeps things running without anyone noticing until it stops. She was not loud, she was not confrontational. She was, by every single measure people use to evaluate whether someone belongs somewhere, exactly where she was supposed to be. On a Tuesday afternoon in April, Kate left work a little early and stopped at the grocery store on the way home. She picked up the usual things: tomatoes, peppers, a zucchini, some bread. She pulled into her driveway at 1:30 p.m., cut the engine, grabbed her bag from the passenger seat, and started walking toward her front door. She had done this exact thing hundreds of times. She would only need to do it once for everything to change. Diane Whitaker had lived on the same street for 6 years. She knew this neighborhood. She knew the cars, the routines, the faces. She had seen Kate's silver sedan in that driveway more times than she could count. She had seen Kate take out the trash, water the small plants by the front step, scrape ice off that same windshield last winter. But on this particular Tuesday, when Diane watched Kate pull in and get out of the car carrying groceries, something happened. Something shifted, and Diane picked up her phone. She told the 911 dispatcher that there was a woman in the neighborhood she didn't recognize. She said the woman was acting suspicious. She said she was worried about the safety of the street. She used the word trespassing. She never said Kate's name, because she didn't need to. The description she gave, a black woman, heavy-set, olive green cardigan, walking toward a house on the block, was specific enough. Officer Richard Marcus was dispatched within minutes. He arrived in 4. Now, here's what I need you to really sit with for a second. Diane Whitaker had lived 6 doors down from Kate Aaron for 2 years. She had seen this woman. She knew this woman's car, this woman's house, this woman's front door. And still, on this Tuesday afternoon, she picked up the phone. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what changed. Ask yourself what Diane actually saw when she looked at Kate getting out of that car. And be honest with yourself about the answer. Officer Richard Marcus was professional. That's the first thing you need to understand about him. Because this story is harder to tell if he isn't. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't looking for trouble. He responded to a call, he followed his training, and he did everything more or less by the book. He pulled up, he approached Kate in her driveway, and he asked her to set the grocery bag down and keep her hands visible. Kate Aaron stood in her own driveway, in front of her own house, holding groceries from the store 3 blocks away, and she put the bag down on the concrete, She kept her hands where he could see them. She had lived in this country long enough, had absorbed enough of its history and its headlines, to know exactly what this moment required of her. Not truth, not righteousness, stillness, compliance, the performance of not being a threat. "Can you tell me what you're doing here today, ma'am?" "I live here," Kate said. "I'm coming home from the grocery store." Officer Marcus asked for identification. Kate provided it. He looked at it. He looked at it longer than the words on it should have required. Then he asked her to confirm her address. She confirmed it. He asked again, phrasing it differently. "And you're saying this is your current residence? At this address?" She said yes. Meanwhile, Diane Whitaker stood in her yard, close enough to watch, far enough to avoid being officially part of what was happening. Arms folded, watching. Do you think a single neighbor came outside and said, "I know her, she lives here"? Let me know in the comments, because not one person did. What happened over the next 20 minutes was not dramatic. That's the part that's hardest to explain to people who haven't lived it. There was no yelling. No one drew a weapon. Officer Marcus was, by all external appearances, simply doing his job. He asked questions. He requested backup, standard for an active call. He kept his tone even and procedural. But Kate Aaron was standing in her own driveway being asked to prove she belonged there, while the woman who had called the police on her watched from the yard, and the late afternoon sun moved across the pavement. And her groceries sat in a paper bag on the concrete getting warm. This is what danger looks like when it wears a procedure. This is what it feels like when the threat isn't a raised voice or a weapon, but a form, a radio call, a sequence of steps that were designed to feel neutral and land on your chest, like weight. A second officer arrived. He began asking Kate questions, separately. How long had she lived here? Did she have any other documentation? Was there anyone who could verify her residence? Kate answered everything. Her voice stayed steady. Inside, she was calculating every word before she said it, monitoring her own hands, her own face, aware that her body was being read in real time by people whose conclusions could reshape the next 10 minutes of her life in ways she would not be able to undo. A neighbor across the street came out onto their porch, saw what was happening, and went back inside. Here's what changed everything, and I want you to pay attention to how small it was. Kate's Ring doorbell camera, installed 8 months prior after a package was stolen from her porch, had been recording since the moment she pulled into the driveway. Not because she planned for this, not because she anticipated any of it. Because someone had taken a delivery box off her front step last fall, and she'd spend $40 on a camera so it wouldn't happen again. That camera recorded Diane Whitaker standing at her mailbox. It recorded the exact moment Diane picked up her phone. It recorded Kate walking calmly from her car to her front door, turning back once to pick up a receipt she'd dropped, and then stopping when Officer Marcus's vehicle turned onto the street. One of the officers noticed the camera mounted above Kate's door. He asked about it. Kate told him it recorded continuously and synced to her phone. He asked if they could review the footage. Yes, Kate said. Please. The officers looked at the footage on Kate's phone, right there in the driveway. 30 seconds of video. Kate pulling in, Kate walking, Kate stopping, Diane watching, Diane dialing. The senior officer's expression didn't change much. He handed the phone back to Kate, walked over to where Diane was still standing in her yard, and told her they needed to speak with her. Now, here's what most stories want to do at this point. They want a big moment. They want Diane Whitaker to crumble publicly, to be marched across the lawn in handcuffs, to face some dramatic reckoning in front of the whole street. That's not what happened. What happened was quieter and, in some ways, heavier. Officer Marcus spoke to Diane in a low voice. A supervisor was called, not to investigate, but to manage the situation, to make sure everything was documented correctly, to protect the department from liability. The supervisor arrived, spoke to Marcus briefly, and then walked over to Kate with careful language. We appreciate your patience. We take these matters very seriously. There will be a thorough review. He did not say Diane Whitaker's name. He did not say that what happened to Kate was wrong. He said that the situation had been addressed and that Kate was free to go on her own driveway, in front of her own house. Diane Whitaker was issued a citation for filing a false police report, a misdemeanor. She was not handcuffed. She was not walked across her own yard in front of her neighbors, the way Kate had been stopped on hers. She was told she would need to appear in court. She was told that the footage and the documented call would be submitted as evidence. She nodded, went inside, and closed her door. Kate picked up her grocery bag from the concrete, went inside her house, put the groceries away, and sat down at her kitchen table. That was it. That was the moment justice arrived. That was what winning looked like. The next 48 hours were strange in the way that only the internet can make things strange. A neighbor, one of the ones who had stayed inside while it was happening, had filmed part of the confrontation from an upstairs window. They posted it. By the following evening, it had 2 million views. Kate's face, Kate's driveway, Kate's groceries on the concrete, Diane watching from across the yard. All of it, frozen and replayed and shared and commented on by people who were not there and who would not remember it in 2 weeks. The comments were you'd expect. Outrage, support, the people who somehow found a way to ask whether Kate could have de-escalated sooner, the people who wanted Diane's employer's phone number, the people who just wanted to feel righteous for 10 minutes before scrolling to the next thing. Kate had not consented to any of this. Her face was now attached, permanently and retrievably, to the worst afternoon she'd had in years. She was being called brave and composed in headlines, both of which, she understood clearly, were compliments for surviving something she should never have been put through. She was not consulted about whether she wanted the video shared. She was not asked how she felt about being a news cycle. Diane Whitaker's employer, a regional insurance firm, released a statement 3 days after the video circulated. They placed Diane on administrative leave pending an internal review. Kate found out about this by reading the comments on a post she hadn't asked anyone to make. Kate called in sick the day after the incident. She was not sick in any way that a doctor could document. She was sick in the way that happens when your body spends several hours in a state of controlled fear and then has nowhere to put it afterward. She lay in bed and looked at her ceiling and tried to remember the last time she had walked into her own home without thinking about it, and couldn't. That evening, she almost called her mother. She didn't, because calling her mother would have required explaining, and explaining would have required reliving, and she was not ready to do that yet. Maybe not that week. She opened her Ring app and checked the camera footage. She watched it again. She saw herself pull in, walk toward the door, drop the receipt, bend to pick it up. She saw Diane at the mailbox. She saw the phone come out. She watched it twice more, not because she didn't believe it, but because she needed to keep believing it, needed the footage to keep being real in the way the rest of the afternoon still didn't feel quite real. She started checking the camera more after that, before she left the house in the morning, when she heard a car slow down on the street, when she woke up at 2 a.m. for no particular reason. She checked it the way you press on a bruise to confirm it's still there. The court date came 6 weeks later. Diane Whitaker appeared and offered the usual explanations. She was a protective neighbor. She didn't recognize the woman. It was a misunderstanding. She never meant any harm. Her attorney used phrases like acting in good faith and reasonable concern for community safety. The judge reviewed the Ring footage. He reviewed the dispatch recording. He read the officer's reports. He looked at the timestamp showing Diane had been standing at her mailbox for 4 minutes before making the call. 4 minutes during which Kate had done nothing except walk from her car toward her front door. "What specifically prompted your concern?" the judge asked Diane directly. Diane said she didn't recognize the woman. "You've lived 6 houses away from Ms. Aaron for 2 years, the judge said. You couldn't identify your own neighbor." Diane didn't answer. The judge found her guilty of filing a false police report. She was fined. She was ordered to complete a racial bias education program. She was placed on probation. She was not ordered to apologize. No one can order that. Here's what the headline said happened. Justice served. Racist neighbor faces consequences. Surveillance footage vindicated black homeowner. Here's what actually happened after the headlines. Nothing changed, structurally, not one thing. The department's internal review concluded 3 weeks after the incident with a finding that Officer Marcus had followed proper procedure. This finding was technically accurate. He had responded to a call. He had asked for identification. He had reviewed available evidence. He had acted within the guidelines he was trained to follow. The guidelines did not require him to ask why a woman carrying groceries in a residential neighborhood on a Tuesday afternoon had been described as a suspicious trespasser. The guidelines did not flag that question as relevant. Officer Marcus was not retrained. No policy was amended. The department issued no statement about the incident beyond confirming that a citation had been issued to the complainant. The department described the outcome as an example of the system working as intended. Kate did not dispute this publicly. Now, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you answer in the comments. When we say the system worked, what do we think we mean? We mean evidence was reviewed. We mean a false report was cited. We mean Kate wasn't arrested. Those things are true. The system did those things. But Kate Aaron still stood in her driveway with a grocery bag on the concrete being asked to prove she lived in her own house. That happened. And the system has no mechanism for undoing it. No procedure for returning the 45 minutes she spent being treated like a suspect in front of her home. No form to file for the way she now checks her camera before she leaves in the morning. And when she hears cars slow down on the street. And at 2 in the morning when she can't sleep. The system caught the lie. It did not address the cost of the lie. And those are two very different things. Diane Whitaker listed her house 4 months after the court date. She told people she was looking for a change, somewhere quieter, fewer things going on. The neighborhood watched her moving truck pull away on a Saturday morning and then went back to its routines. Kate watched from her front window. She did not feel victorious. She did not feel relieved. She felt something more complicated than either of those things. The particular exhaustion of a person who has been proven right about something they desperately wish they'd been wrong about. She stayed in her house. She had bought it, and she was keeping it, and no amount of what had happened was going to change that. She still waves at the neighbors who wave back. She has learned permanently and precisely which ones those are. Not because she wanted to know, but because she does now, and there's no unknowing it. She knows which neighbor came outside, saw what was happening, and went back in. She knows which one showed up at her door afterward with apologies and casseroles, and the slightly desperate energy of people trying to distance themselves from what their silence had meant. She knows what she lives among now, more completely than she knew it before. This is not wisdom. It is not strength. It is the specific, permanent recalibration that happens when the world confirms something you spent years hoping wasn't quite as true as it felt. A few months after everything settled, a local advocacy organization asked if they could use the footage and Kate's account in a community workshop about racially motivated police calls. Kate said yes. She drove to the workshop on a Wednesday evening. She sat in the back. She watched people react to the footage, the intake of breath, the head shakes, the murmur conversations. She watched a retired police officer in the front row fold his hands and stare at the screen for a long time. After the presentation, a woman came up to Kate and said, "You're so strong. I don't know how you stayed so calm." Kate smiled the way you smile when someone means well and doesn't quite understand what they're saying. She wasn't calm because she was strong. She was calm because she didn't have the option of being anything else. She was calm because she had calculated, in real time, that calm was the version of herself that might get to go home that evening. She was calm the way people are calm when the alternative isn't safe. She didn't explain this to the woman. She just thanked her and drove home and checked her camera before she got out of the car. This story matters for all the reasons that are easy to say and hard to sit with. It matters because racism doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always come with slows and spectacle. Sometimes it comes from a woman at a mailbox who has seen your car in that driveway hundreds of times and still, on one Tuesday afternoon, decides you don't belong there. Sometimes it comes disguised as concern, as protection, as a phone call to a dispatcher who asks no clarifying questions and sends a patrol car in 4 minutes. It matters because evidence saved Kate, and evidence should not be the thing standing between a black woman and her front door. She was fortunate. Fortunate that she installed a camera after a package theft. Fortunate that an officer noticed it. Fortunate that the footage was clear. Fortunate in ways that no person should have to be fortunate just to get inside their own home. Not everyone has a camera. Not every officer looks for one. Not every outcome looks like this one. And it matters because what happened to Kate did not end when the citation was issued, or when the judge read the verdict, or when the moving truck left. It continued, quietly and permanently, in the way she moves through the place she lives. That part doesn't make the news. That part doesn't go viral. That part is just hers to carry, indefinitely, because one neighbor decided on a Tuesday that she looked suspicious carrying groceries in her own driveway. A cleared name is not the same as a safe feeling. Justice on paper is not the same as justice in the body. And a system that followed its own procedure is not the same as a system that protected the person who needed protecting. Those gaps between what the law can address and what it cannot, between what evidence proves and what it heals, are where the real story lives. Kate Aaron is still in her house. She still goes to the grocery store. She still comes home on Tuesday afternoons. She still puts her bag down and gets out her keys and walks to her front door. And every single time she does, some part of her is also standing in that driveway, bag on the concrete, hands visible, waiting to be told she can go. That part doesn't leave. That part is the cost of all of this, and no verdict will cover it. If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with someone who would appreciate it, and let's keep building this community together. And before you go, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what stood out to you the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next.